After his visit last week, the Chargers have officially signed tight end Tyler Conklin, and I think this has a chance to be another really great deal given out by Joe Ortiz.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Unlike some of the other signings that the Chargers made in free agency, they did not hide the fact that they were looking to add a veteran tight end, and they were able to strike a deal with Tyler Conklin on a 1-year deal, and a deal that could be a very big bargain if he continues on what he's been able to produce the last couple of seasons. And then it's time to get into some mock draft Monday prospects, starting with some wide receivers. We're going to talk about Tetairoa McMillan, the big monster from Arizona, and then Matthew Golden, the speedster from Texas.
Yeah, and two guys I think most commonly linked as far as wide receivers to the Chargers in the first round, and we know they need weapons, and both could be a possibility. But today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We're this close to having Tyler Conklin on this show, and have him on the show before, you could even digest the fact that he was signed. But a crazy weekend for him, and we're going to plan to get him on down the road. But we talked about our approval for this deal on Friday's show, and it was nice to see a deal get done after seeing the visit from Evan Ingram and having that turn into him signing with a division rival. I don't know if my heart could have taken another visit turning into, a player signing somewhere else, but this, David, to me, to find, I should say, one of the kind of more productive tight ends flying under the radar, and to be able to secure him late in the second week of free agency, a super consistent player for what looks like a bargain deal for Joe Ortiz, I think is a true home run at this point to get what they needed out of this guy.
Another phenomenal deal by Joe Ortiz in line with what he's done with the rest of free agency, just getting a ton of bargain type of deals that look like players could easily overproduce the value that they've been given. So, we got the details of the contract, obviously, pretty shortly after it was put out. 1 year, $3 million with incentives to get to $4.5 million for a player who has, the last, 3 of the last 4 seasons have been over 550 yards receiving and had 4 straight seasons over 50 catches in all of those seasons. Like, this has been a very, very productive player in the NFL, and there's a great chance that he can outproduce the type of contract that he's been given. So another great deal by Joe.
I think so too. I mean, I think this isn't the flashy signing that's going to, you're going to put billboards up about, but this is just solid roster construction. This is filling a problem that's not a problem yet. This is not putting all of your eggs in the draft basket, which we'll talk about. But I mean, per over the cap, if it's at $3 million, is the 36th highest paid tight end in the NFL right now. And according to Chargers.com, he's a dude who's 14th in receiving yards and 8th in catches since the start of 2022 when he went to the Jets. That plays, man, that's a really, really solid addition to this room. And I think now you have 2, although not top 10 tight ends on your roster, you have 2 legitimate starting capable tight ends in him and Will Dissly now, who just put up a career season. So to have the room looking like that, to make this signing at this point, and just to continue to kind of chip away and find these small incentive-laden deals to fill out a roster while still managing to be very, flexible with the cap, very responsible with the cap. Although it's not the big names we wanted to see potentially, this is probably a smarter way to go about it. And I think he complements what Will Dissly and Tucker Fisk do well. And I think that when you're talking about what his pros are, I mean, just solid. You're just not going to find a ton of big holes in his game. I mean, the last year the Chargers were depending on Tucker Fisk and Eric Tomlinson, right, to make big plays for them in meaningful games. And now you're talking about a guy who consistently produces and never misses time.
Yeah, he posts. He shows up all the time. He has less than 5 missed games throughout his NFL career that spans over 7 seasons. So he shows up, and he has great hands, which for a primarily a pass catching tight end, which is what he's been brought in to kind of be. Can he block? Yeah, I mean, he can block decently, but that's probably not going to be the primary reason that he's on this football team. You know, you have Will Dissly, you have Tucker Fisk, you have those guys that are, you know, primarily going to be your blockers. And I think this guy adds that, you know, veteran pass catching tight end element that you really needed to add to this football team. One drop in the last 2 seasons. That's over 150 targets. Just straight up reliable. I mean, you throw him the football, chances are he's going to come down with it. The stats don't lie. And like, this is something that's been the case throughout his NFL career, not just the last 2 seasons. It's just eye popping when you look at the last 2 seasons combined. So I really like the deal. I feel like it raises the floor of the room here, makes it look a little bit more competent heading into the draft.
Absolutely, it does. And I think that this was also in part because they weren't willing to part with draft picks to go get a Dallas Goedert, right? Who obviously is the anti, you know, Tyler Conklin in the sense that like he's missed an average of 5 games per year over the last 3 seasons. And you're talking about a dude who's only missed 2 games in 7 seasons. We saw it with Najee Harris. We're seeing it in this move with Tyler Conklin, that the durability part of it is going to be a huge factor in if the Chargers end up signing these guys. So I think to get someone like Tyler Conklin, who not only has super sure hands, is, you know, decently athletic, and after the catch isn't going to be about his explosiveness, it's going to be about his toughness, similar to a Gerald Everett, right? Where if you see the clip that the Chargers put out, and it's like, we always said Gerald Everett, it was a fist fight anytime anyone wanted to tackle him. Yeah. You get those vibes a little bit from Tyler Conklin as well, a former 4th round pick who was a backup to Kyle Rudolph and kind of just came to his own one year and has had 4 seasons of being one of the most consistent tight ends in the NFL, and you're getting him for $3 million at the end of the second week of free agency. I think it's good. And I think a lot of people, and the panic kind of surrounding this move specifically is, oh, here we go. We're not going to make a big move. We're not going to take one in the draft now because they ended up signing Tyler Conklin. And I disagree with that. Like, I think this just gives you a little bit of flexibility going into the draft, but this does not, in all capital letters, stop the Chargers from drafting a tight end in this upcoming draft, and it doesn't even stop them from drafting a tight end at 22.
Not at all, guys. Like, let's think about this for a second. This is a 1-year contract. Yeah. You go select a player in the draft. If it's the first round, you got him for 5 seasons. Anywhere else, you got him for 4 seasons. So let's not confuse a temporary short-term move with a long-term roster construction building type of move like it is to be selecting a tight end in the draft. I very much still expect the Chargers to take a tight end in the draft, and I expect them to take one high because they need to. They still need to add an injection of youth and some talent at the tight end position. They have neglected to do that the last several seasons, and they cannot wait no longer. Justin Herbert deserves that pass-catching tight end weapon that a lot of these other quarterbacks have, and we know that when you pair him with one that can go catch the football like a Hunter Henry, he can put up some pretty good numbers. So I feel like this is something that, it's great to add the veteran, but by no means does it mean they are not going to go draft their next tight end of the future.
That's the thing. Yeah, the tight end of the future, at least the receiving option, isn't on the roster right now. And I think even if you were to take a Colston Loveland, who the Chargers have a meeting with this week, it doesn't change anything. What it does, though, is it puts a little less pressure on him to be that dude right away at a position that's historically really tough to transition to the next level at. There's plenty of first-round tight ends that haven't worked out, or it's taken a little bit for it to work out. This gives you just a lot more kind of security in that room. It gives you a solid floor to that room. Now, you don't have to get a guy. Like, your tight end room, I like Stone Smart, and I think they're going to miss some of the explosiveness because that's not what Tyler Conklin brings to this game, the vertical threat that Stone Smart was. But this is an upgraded tight end room right now going into the draft. And I think that that says a lot about how they're building this roster. And they did it without having to break the bank. But we still want them to add weapons in the draft. And we're going to talk about the 2 weapons outside of tight end that have been linked to them most in the first round. Tetairoa, McMillan, and also Matthew Golden, the 2 top receivers potentially in this draft class on Mock Draft Monday, and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to ask you if you've ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, because your personal CFO can give you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center, and you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I realized just how much money I was spending on food. And I also realized how much money my wife was spending on some things as well, especially the baby. Definitely spending a lot on the baby right now, but it's just an incentive to get a little bit better, to have some marks for the next month to try to be. And that's been my favorite part about it, is giving myself that challenge in one of the most friendly, interactive ever kind of budgeting financial app that I've ever used. It's just so different because of just the detail that it gives you when you're going through your finances. And you can take control of your finances as well with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. If you don't feel it, you should feel it now, because March Madness is here and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. And I hope that all of you partook in the first weekend, because it was absolutely insane. Games wall to wall. And guess what? We still have the Sweet 16. We still have the Elite 8 still to come. And right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories to even who's cutting down the nets. And if you think you have a good grasp on that after the first weekend, you can still get good odds on the eventual national champion. You could go with the favorite Duke right now at plus 230. But if you want to go with the long shot, you can get a red-hot Alabama team at plus 1,500 to win the whole thing. Staying in on the action with tournament games happening almost every day is so important, and it's easy and fast with FanDuel. It's so simple to use that when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, David, well, it's Mock Draft Monday, and as we get a little bit closer to the draft, it means it's grinding the tape season, and today we did it on the 2 top receivers that have been linked to the Chargers at pick 22. And we're talking about T-Mac, Tetairoa McMillan, the guy who's been, from last year, really going to be the guy that was thought of as the top wide receiver in this draft class. And now we have some testing numbers on him, but you can look at the dude and know why he's a good receiver, or at least why teams are so interested in him, because he has a very unique physical profile, David, and he plays that way. That was kind of one of our big takeaways as far as what Tetairoa McMillan brings to the table as a 6'4", 219-pound receiver with 10-inch hands. This dude's a big X receiver, a big physical receiver that plays like a big receiver. And we know they have Mike Williams, but it wouldn't not make sense for them to add a dude like this who could be that for them on a long-term basis.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chargers already know that type of receiver definitely plays with Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is the type of guy that he can go throw it and he can access any part of the football field. And, you know, Mike Williams and Justin Herbert have really combined for some absolute magic throughout, you know, their careers. And so, you know, that type of receiver is something that Justin Herbert can utilize.
And I think the thing is with him is that with Mike Williams on that 1-year deal, even though you would look at this and say, okay, well, what these dudes do best is probably similar in the sense that both these guys are above the rim receivers. That it doesn't matter if they're creating separation because they can win those one-on-one matchups on the outside anyways.
Yeah.
And I don't think, you know, that they necessarily feel like they have to get a guy like that now because of the signing of Mike Williams, who could get hurt, right? I mean, we don't know. But this is a dude who was thought to go well before the Chargers pick at 22 and started slipping a little bit. Daniel Jeremiah in his last mock draft had him to the Chargers at the 22nd pick. Now he ran his 40 time, which I think for him was probably pretty good. It's a pro day, so we won't know what the laser time is. We'll never find out. 4.53 for a receiver with his kind of game. Not the end of the world. You're not drafting him because of his long, you know, top speed. But when you're looking at what he does super well, David, like we watched Quentin Johnson. Our biggest takeaway was like, he doesn't play as big as he is. And I think that you don't really have those issues with T-Mac, as they call him. This is a dude who's been a red zone monster, and has made big plays for each of the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, 100%. Gigantic frame and plays big. That's the first thing that I put on my notes. And it didn't take me but about 5 or 10 minutes to be able to watch this guy play to be able to figure that out. Has very strong hands, obviously can go up and play above the rim and go get the football. And he has the size and the strength to be an impact blocker in the running game as well. I mean, 6'4", 220 pounds, like, that you can lean on some defensive backs and get them out of the way. And I definitely did see that. And he has that want to as well. He uses that big frame to box out defenders and go up and get the football as well. You kind of have to be able to do that as a big receiver. And not only does he have those skills, he has the premium production to match. 2 seasons of 1,300 plus receiving yards and 18 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. So this guy is getting into the end zone at a very, very high clip. And also, surprisingly, did a very good job of making people miss. He has 29 forced missed tackles, which was tied for 3rd according to PFF. So did a really, really good job of, utilizing what he, does best, which is go up and get the ball. And was able to make some things happen with that physicality after he had the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and I was surprised by his route running. I think you kind of always expect big guys like this to be a little bit lumbering, and I didn't get that feeling from him. I definitely thought he was more of a smooth operator than kind of a clunky big receiver that sometimes you would see with someone who's 6'4" like that. So very impressed with that. Big playmaker per Dane Brugler, the most 20-plus yard catches in college football over the last 2 years. I think the back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons for Marcus Mosher, he's the only player that's done that, right? So does have that top-end production. Very good on in-breaking routes, dig routes, things like that. Comeback routes, he does a good job of using his size to get separation.
Yeah,
he does a really, really good job tracking the football as well. It's one thing to be big and to have the ball in your vicinity. Nobody has more circus acrobatic catches on their tape than this dude. And that's why it's so hard not to fall in love with him, because, you see some of the one-handed catches that he's making and all that, and his game has to be more than that. I definitely see the Drake London comparisons, because when you have a guy like this, it's just a matchup nightmare, because you're not going to find any corners that are this size that are going to be able to compete with him consistently. And yeah, 18 touchdowns the last 2 years, 8+ touchdowns in every season at college football. Also very quarterback friendly, right? When he runs those comeback routes, he will come back to get the football. He doesn't wait for the football to get to him, which I really appreciate. And we know Ladd McConkey, that's one of the things that made him so special, was he was just such a quarterback-friendly receiver last year coming back to the ball. That being said, there are some risks to it, especially for a guy like this. And David, I think that there's a reason if he does slip, it's probably because of some of the same concerns that we had for him.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a really super explosive first step. I mean, which is obviously not a huge surprise considering his size.
Build up speed.
Yeah, right. He definitely is one of those, type of players. He's got to build up speed. The release packages probably need a little bit of work. I mean, obviously that's something that you can continue to work on as you enter the NFL. I think he probably could have some issues winning against man press coverage, at least up front. I mean, he's going to do a great job of going up and get the football after he's able to get off the line of scrimmage. But that's pretty much all I had for him. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of detractors for the games that I was able to watch. I mean, he has an obvious skill set that will play in the NFL. And so there's a couple things to clean up, but your development doesn't stop when you get to the NFL level. If anything, it accelerates.
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing with him, is that he could go a lot of different ways. It feels like he could be a dominant wide receiver for a long time, but if he's not able to get off man coverage, if dudes are just going to get too physical with him and he's not going to be able to create consistent separation, can he show that he's going to be more than a jump ball guy at the next level? Yeah. And I think that's really what it's about. The 4.53 speed, not super concerning. I thought it was interesting that he forced the 3rd most missed tackles, but ranked 248th in yards after the catch per catch.
I did notice that. Yeah,
that was kind of weird. I mean, because they only averaged 5 yards after the catch per catch for someone whose yak doesn't come from speed, but comes from the physicality that he runs with. And has a big frame, a thin frame for a dude his size, right? He's definitely a thinner frame. But I think it's probably where the kind of Drake London comparisons come from, and why I don't really see Mike Evans a lot when I watch him. A little different. But he could be an elite blocker if he wanted to, but he's not an elite blocker right now. I think that's part of the thing that bugs me, and it's always going to bug me with college wide receivers. And if it makes you feel any better about it, I thought Cornelius Johnson was like the best blocker I watched, in the class last year that we watched, and that dude didn't even make the roster as a seventh round pick. So coaches don't care about the blocking, that as much as I do in a lot of ways. These other things are definitely outweigh that. But yeah, like I said, I mean, build up speed guy. There's one clip of him where you just see someone like holding on to him the entire route and just like has a fistful of his jersey and he's trying to run through it. And the guy never lets go, but he still makes the catch anyways. Like he still, like, he doesn't need to be open. So even though you want the separation, which is not really what his game is, Justin Herbert has shown the ability to trust his receivers. And I think if they got that, he would trust him down the field. It's just how much can his game branch out, to be more than that, more than just the jump ball guy. I would understand if he fell to 22. I could see this guy being a top 10 pick because of the physical, just the intangibles, the measurables. But yeah, I mean, there's another guy I think who's, comparable, at least as far as how in favor of it I would be if the Chargers took them at 22. And that's the next guy we're going to talk about, because I know some fans are sold on Matthew Golden, and I totally understand why. So we're going to get into how we feel about him and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, David, time to dive back into the tape with another wide receiver the Chargers could potentially target at 22, and that is wide receiver Matthew Golden from Texas, who just had a really, really great run, especially towards the end of the year last year in college football. But thank you, as always, for making us your first listen. Make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for Buy or Sell Tuesday as well. If you need a second listen, probably check out Locked On NFL Draft. My guys, Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. We're going to try to get both of them on the show at some point, because both of those guys are great and would love to get their draft expertise, and we will. But make sure you guys check them out as we lead up to the draft on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts from. Matthew Golden, David, a guy that you liked a lot, and it's definitely easy to see why the Chargers would want him, or at least why he's linked there, because I do think he is smaller, so I think there'd be some concern about, well, you already have Ladd McConkey, who's a small receiver. Are you going to draft another smaller receiver? But I think the nice thing about Matthew Golden is he's proven that he can play outside, plenty of outside snaps on his tape. And I think that even though he is smaller, I think he does have a very different game than Ladd McConkey, a very different game than Quentin Johnston or Mike Williams. So I think I understand it on that level.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Golden is explosive, man. He's got some real speed and real change of direction ability, and I think that's the reason why I really enjoyed watching him and why I can see, what his applications would be to the Chargers offense very, very easily.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, right? Because we'll talk about, his speed, and especially because that is going to be a big part of the conversation, because the dude ran a 4.29. It's funny, it doesn't almost seem so dynamic at times, but it works for him. And I think one of my pros that I had for him, especially after watching Tetairoa McMillan, the guy who's the best jump ball guy in this class, is like, Matthew Golden plays a lot bigger than his 5'11", 191-pound body. I mean, he plays like a big receiver at times and has really great body control, contorts to make catches outside of his frame. Another guy who you're going to see some circus catches from, and you did see him from him in that playoff run that Texas had this year. One of the things I like about him as far as making big plays down the field, even though he's not blowing past dudes all the time, because that's kind of what you expect to see when you're watching a dude who ran a 4.29, he creates really subtle separation down the field where he can just drive the corner inside enough to where he can make the space to come back to his back shoulder and catch a deep ball down the field. And I think another good thing about him, because there is a production kind of red flag with him for sure, we'll talk about, but he balled out in the playoffs and in the SEC championship game on the biggest stages, right? 8 for 162 versus Georgia in the SEC championship game. And then he had 7 for 149 and a touchdown versus Arizona State. They needed him in those big games, and he played like a first-round receiver in those on the biggest stage that there is.
Yeah, I mean, in that Arizona game that you're talking about, he showed some elite change of direction. He caught a pass against Arizona where he put his foot in the ground, did a nice little jab step, and literally gained 40 extra yards because of that one subtle move to kind of get the defender out of position. Yeah. And he does a really good job of just destroying the angles of the defenders and really trying to make it difficult to try to get him down on the ground. And as you mentioned, he came in clutch at the end of the game. In Arizona, he had a really physical hands catch on a strong route that, ended up sealing that game for them. And so also like the fact that, he does a really great job of going up and get the football at the highest point, as you mentioned, for a receiver who is not the biggest, but, doesn't allow that to stop him from going up and making sure that when the ball's in the air, it's his ball and he's going to come down with it. And I really loved how he creates separation by snapping off his routes. Like he really, really snaps off his routes. Very, very fresh, very, very strong cuts. And it creates separation very routinely, very regularly for him and his game, which, hey, one of those things that you're going to be looking at if you're, don't have that overwhelming size characteristic is, can you create separation with your routes and with your, route running ability? And he absolutely can do that. So that's a big feather in his cap when you talk about Matthew Golden's game.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. I mean, the acceleration after the catch I thought is nice. I mean, I think what you're talking about there is a leverage. Like, he does a really good job of leveraging defenders and leveraging their angles, because I don't think, I mean, the hard thing is he didn't do his explosiveness, agility testing yet. It'll be interesting if he does that at his pro day, which is coming up this week, and we'll see. But like it is, I think, more crafty. Like that was like, it's polished. Like the way he finds those yards after the catch, I thought, which is really nice. I mean, there are several times where you're turning a 7-yard gain into a chunk play. I mean, I thought honestly his best play maybe that I watched was the double move that he had against Arizona State, where he just left the safety totally just with broken ankles and got open for a wide open touchdown. And for a guy that's his size and doesn't have a ton of college production. I mean, he wasn't, never had a 1,000-yard receiver. We'll talk about that. But 16% of his career catches were touchdowns. I mean, the dude catches touchdowns, 22 touchdowns in 3 seasons.
Yeah.
That plays, right? I mean, Tetairoa has 26 in 3 seasons, and the dude is 6'4", right? A prototypical red zone threat. You don't look at Matthew Golden and think he's that guy, but he has been that guy, which I thought is nice. So, get to the cons. Kind of like with Quentin Johnston, where when I first watched him, my first kind of note was just like, he doesn't play like the size that he is. He's a big wide receiver that doesn't play like a big wide receiver. Matthew Golden is a 4.29 speed guy that doesn't play like a 4.29 speed guy. Like, you're not just seeing him blow past defenders. You're not seeing him catch a ball and then just leave everybody in the dust as you would think you would with a 4.29 guy. Like, 4.29 looks a certain way when you see it. Like, how it makes... It's really more about how it makes everyone else look in comparison to you, right? How slow everyone else looks.
Think about Tyreek Hill on the football field when he's running away from everybody. That's
totally.
What that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, even Ladd, like, not like the most explosive deep threat guy coming out of college, but like when he caught the ball and turned it upfield, as you saw against the Saints in that game, as you saw in the playoff game against the Texans with the 87-yarder.
He can take it the distance.
He can go. I didn't see Matthew Golden pulling away from guys like that, which was a little bit surprising with the 4.29 speed. I'd say my other concerning thing, David, it has to just be the production, man. Like, to never have had a 1,000-yard season, only 1 year, 2 of a 987-yard season in college football in 3 seasons. Like, that is a little concerning. Like, it does make you feel a little bit better about T-Mac, that it's like he has 2 1,300-yard seasons of just him being a monster. This one is much more about projection, because I think he had 3 or 4 games last year with 2 catches or less. An offense that definitely didn't necessarily play to his strengths until later on in the year. But I do think that just gives me a little bit of concern, where it's like, man, I wish I would have seen the dominance over a bigger stretch of time.
And I agree. I completely understand that. And I think that is, well-founded, while also understanding that Quinn Ewers, who was throwing him the football last year, did not have the best season and was not that great. I mean, let's be honest. He was kind of an okay at best type of quarterback, but kind of in line with the speed issues here. You should have had better yards after catch numbers. When you look at it, only forced 8 missed tackles and had 5.2 yards after catch per reception, which were, considering, where he's
only
at,
a little bit better than Tetairoa McMillan. Yeah,
is not, is not that much different. And I think also not a very effective run blocker. I mean, I think that's something that you obviously need to continue to work on. And, it seems like whenever he's not directly involved in the play, his effort level could kind of wane. It it could be something that's
Sure.
not always there every single play, I think is what I'm trying to say. So again, a couple of things that I'm nitpicking, but I like the skill set. I actually personally like him over, a McMillan personally, just from what he brings to the table. But I can see why both of these guys would be somebody that the Chargers would be interested in bringing in to add another weapon to the offense, another weapon for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing me and you talked about before the show is like the Chargers aren't picking 5 this year, right? So you're not
Right.
comparing them with the level of prospect that we were last year in a year that they had a really, really incredible wide receiver class. Like you're not turning these guys on and seeing Malik Neighbors. Like it doesn't pop out as obviously as it did for some of those guys last year with,
Yeah.
Even Ladd McConkey. When you watch Ladd McConkey last year, you're like, okay, well, there's obviously injury red flags. He's a little bit smaller, but like you see it and it pops out off the page right away. We're gonna watch more of these guys as we get closer to the draft potentially. I don't know, like I don't necessarily see as sure of a things, which you're not gonna get with the 22nd overall pick. I would understand if the Chargers took either of these guys, but it's not the way I was last year where I'm like, oh my god, Malik Neighbors are bust at 5. Different level, different class, different level of pick, different level of talent with these guys. But I definitely see it. I can see the vision on both these guys, and they both look like first round picks to me. So I'd understand it, but as we start watching some of the other prospects, especially at other positions as well, like it would be hard for me to pick between even these top 2 receivers and the top 2 tight ends. I might lean tight ends in that scenario. So we'll see how we feel about the Kenneth Grants of the world when we get there and the other potential first round picks for the Chargers before we put our full stamp on it. But I would understand both of these guys if that's the way the Chargers decided to go. And Lord knows they need weapons, and we'll see if maybe we find some value that feels better later on in the draft. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is tomorrow is Buy or Sell Tuesday, where we're getting into the biggest Chargers overreactions and storylines, and you can hit us up with your buy or sell on Twitter at LockedOnLAC. We'll put a post out on YouTube where you can put it in the YouTube comments as well, but also on Instagram at LockedOnChargers, or you can call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your buy or sells there. You can also hit me and David up on Twitter for me at Dan Talk Sports and David at Dro Talk SD. But this roster's coming together. Love the signing of Tyler Conklin. Can't wait to get him on the show. And we're starting to see that there are going to be some options in the draft that can definitely help this team as well, with 10 draft picks going into the 2025 NFL draft. So we're your team every day, the only daily Chargers podcast out there, and we'll be here every day until the draft. So make sure you guys keep checking back in on us as we keep getting deeper and deeper into this class. But until buy or sell tomorrow, guys, until then, take it easy and go Bolts.